So how can we find the values of nature, the values of environmental goods and services? How does environmental valuation actually work? I will give you a couple of examples in the following minutes. Let's go back to our example in the beginning. We have a forest area, a natural forest area that we might want to preserve, that we might want to conserve. We do not want to, we need to decide whether or not we want to preserve that forest area or we want to use that area to build a factory, for example. So there's a trade-off, factory or forest. Now what we need to do is we need to find and measure the values of preserving the forest. Now, a forest provides many different types of ecosystem services that contribute to our well-being. Some of these ecosystem services can be measured based directly on market values. For instance, all types of provisioning services that lead to goods that are provided which are traded on markets. In that case, we can use the market value. One of the things that are produced by a forest is wood, timber. And we can use wood for different purposes. We can build houses. We can produce furniture. We can produce paper and other things. So wood is a valuable natural resource for us that we can use, and it will generate some sort of benefit to us. Now, wood is usually traded on real markets, which is a good thing because that means that we already know that we already have a market value for wood. We know exactly how much we have to pay on average for a cubic meter of wood from a certain quality. And we can use this market value to measure the provisioning ecosystem service provision of wood by that forest area that we are talking about. So this is the easiest example. We have one particular type of ecosystem service, and this generates a product that is traded on real markets, and we can use the market value as an indicator for the value of that provisioning service. Now, unfortunately, there are many other ecosystem services which are not traded on markets. In fact, most ecosystem services are not traded on markets. For example, when we are talking about this forest area, we know that people also like to go to a forest when they are on vacation or when they are on their weekends. So they use forest landscapes for recreational purposes. Maybe they go hiking or they ride their bicycle, they go for a walk. Forest areas are popular places for recreational purposes. Now this ecosystem service, this cultural ecosystem service that is provided by the forest is difficult to measure in monetary terms because actually we cannot really find a price for this recreation option that the forest provides to us. But we can find substitute or surrogate goods that give us an idea that we can use as a proxy indicator. And this is what we do when we apply the so-called revealed preference approaches. Let's talk about an example. We can use the so-called travel cost method. The travel cost method works as follows. When we have a forest and we have some people that go to the forest for recreational purposes, we can use the travel cost that these people need to cover as an indicator for the value of the cultural ecosystem service recreation that the forest provides. What we need to do is to do a survey among visitors of that forest. So we would interview people coming to the forest and ask them about how they came to the forest. Maybe they walked to the forest if they live very close by, or maybe they took the bicycle, but maybe they had to take the car in order to go to the forest because they live in another part of the country, or the forest is at least some distance away from their home. Now, when they use a car or when they come by train or things like that, then there will be some cost for traveling. People need to pay for the gas of their car and so on. And people do that because they know that they get some benefit from going to the forest. So there is some value for those people. Now, the travel cost approach simply makes use of that fact. So one would ask visitors of a forest about their modes of transport to come to the forest area, about how much they needed to pay in order to come for the forest area. Based on interviewing a couple of people or based on other estimates, one would calculate approximately how many people visit the forest each year, how much these people pay on average to go to the forest, and that value can then be used as an indicator for the value of that cultural ecosystem service recreation that the forest provides. Another example for a revealed preference approach is the so-called property value approach. The property value approach is something that is used, for instance, when we want to find the value of regulating ecosystem services such as provision of clean air. How does it work? We know that we have different levels of air quality in different parts of cities. When talking about the greater Bangkok area, we know that air pollution is worst in highly populated areas or in parts of the city which are close to industrial plants, for instance, because those are the areas where most pollution from transportation or from industrial production is generated. And there are other places which have lower air pollution, because maybe they are a little bit outside of the city or in places where we don't have that much traffic and not that much industrial pollution. Now, what the property value approach does is that it compares the value of properties, that is of houses, in these different areas. And you know that when people buy a house or when people rent an apartment, they take into account many different factors and then decide how much they want to pay for the house or how much they are willing to pay as a rent for an apartment. Of course, this depends on the size of the house or the apartment, the number of rooms, the quality of the house and the apartment, but it also depends on the environmental quality surrounding that property. People are willing to pay more for living in an area with less air pollution. Now, the property value approach takes that into account and estimates the effect of having, for example, good air quality or better air quality on property values, on prices for houses and prices for apartments. And this value, this difference between the rent for an apartment in a polluted area and the rent for an apartment in a less polluted area, this difference is then used as a proxy for the regulating ecosystem service provision of good air quality. This is how the property value approach works.